Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're tackling a question I see all the time from Power BI users. Why isn't my slicer working on a measure, and how can I actually get it to behave the way I want? If you've ever tried to use a slicer to filter by a measure in your report and found it just doesn't respond, don't worry, you're definitely not alone. By the end of this video, you'll not only understand why this happens, but you'll also have a couple of clear, practical strategies to solve it and make your reports a whole lot more interactive. So let's dive right in. First, let's understand what's actually going on behind the scenes. In Power BI, slicers are fantastic tools for filtering your data and giving viewers control over what gets shown on the page. But here, the key detail. Slicers only interact with columns, not measures. You might be wondering, why does that matter? Well, think of it like this. Columns in your data are like the ingredients in a recipe. They're the raw pieces Power BI uses to build your visuals. A measure, on the other hand, is like a final dish. It's the sum or average or calculation you get after the ingredients are combined and cooked. Measures don't store values row by row. They're calculated on the fly every time a filter changes or you interact with your report. Let's make this tangible with an example. Imagine you have a measure called total sales, maybe something like total sales equals sum sales amount. If you try to drop this measure into a slicer, hoping, say, to filter your report for products with sales greater than $500, Power BI just throws up its hands. It doesn't know which rows you want because that measure is an aggregation. It's not tied to a specific list of products or customers. That's why the slicer just isn't designed to filter measures directly. So what can you do about it? Here, where things get better, there are a couple of proven ways to make slicers work for you, even with measures. First, and most commonly, use a supporting column in your slicer instead of a measure. Let's say you want to filter your report by product or by date. Just add the product or date column to your slicer, not the total sales measure. What happens here is the slicer is filtering down the rows in your data, like narrowing the ingredient list, and then the measure recalculates over just those filtered rows. For instance, click on Product A in your slicer, and total sales will only add up the sales for Product A. This approach works seamlessly, and most of the time it's all you need. But what if you really want to filter by the measure itself? Maybe you want to give the user a way to view only the products with sales above $500 or only the top performers. In cases like this, you need to get a little more creative, and this is where a disconnected table comes in. Think of a disconnected table as a helper table that isn't linked to your main data model, but gives you options to reference in your slicer. You might set up a table with a few sales ranges, 500 greater or equal 500 in all. Place this table in your slicer. Then you'll want to create a custom measure that checks what's been selected from your slicer and spits out a flag for whether a given row should be shown. Here's a practical example. You create a measure like sales range filter that uses some simple DAX. It looks at the selected sales range and returns a 1 or 0 based on whether the current row's sales match the range. When you use this as a filter in your visuals, your chart or table will only show the results that line up with your slicer selection, even though it's really filtering by measure logic behind the scenes. This approach might feel a little advanced at first, but don't be discouraged. Once you've set it up once, you'll find it opens up a lot of power in your reports. And remember, if your slicers aren't doing what you expect, just double check. Are you putting in a measure or are you using a column? Alright, I hope this clears up why slicers act the way they do with measures in Power BI and gives you some new options for your own dashboards. If you found this helpful, please give the video a thumbs up. Let me know in the comments if you have questions or want to see more Power BI tips. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a tutorial. Thanks for watching and happy reporting.